coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio. This is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier journalist, Top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine, and your favorite professor, Fernando Uribe. Hope you all had a wonderful Father's Day weekend. I know I did. And as always, there is a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, let me just give you a little context here because, every December for many, many years, as the weather gets cold and you just want to be indoors because of the freezing temperatures in many instances, you know what? I could always rely on that first Tuesday of December at 10 p.m. because CBS would always carry the Victoria's Secret fashion show. And for any heterosexual male, we know that it is a joyous time of year. Of course, it's the holiday season, but it seems like Christmas comes early when we get to watch the Victoria's Secret Angels. Now, let me just preface this by saying that obviously, like a lot of heterosexual males, we love watching the show. And for a lot of gyms across the country, we know that memberships skyrocket the following morning as females, of course, become self-conscious after watching the gorgeous Victoria's Secret Angels. But of course, like anything else, we all know that the left and, liberals and progressives and, of course, the woke fools can't wait to just get their hands on something else and ruin it for the rest of us. And of course, over the years, we heard some complaints from the usual crowd. And of course, mostly the feminazis, as I like to call them, those incessant cat ladies that don't like programs like the Victoria's Secret fashion show. Now, of course, everyone always knew, if you follow me on social media, I was always unavailable between the hours of 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern time as I was watching the fashion show on CBS. And of course, like all men, we dream, of course, and as handsome as I am, I know I would never be able to date a Victoria's Secret angel. But, one can always dream. But we enjoyed watching the show. And of course, like anything else we've seen in today's toxic woke culture, eventually that show got canceled. And only 2 years ago, we no longer had the privilege of watching the Victoria's Secret fashion show. And of course, Victoria's Secret was under immense pressure to be, quote, more inclusive and accepting of women's bodies, whatever the hell that means. But let's sort of fast forward to 2021. And this week, and multiple news outlets were reporting that Victoria's Secret was indeed saying goodbye to its famous angels and saying hello to athletes, activists, and actors as the lingerie brand's new spokespeople. Now, of course, the intimate clothing retailer known for using models called angels to represent collections and, of course, walk in the amazing Victoria's Secret fashion show I just discussed, announced a rebrand with a new campaign recruiting a group of diverse women as the brand's new representatives. Now, of course, among the women selected to join the VS collective are professional soccer star Megan Rapinoe, actress Priyanka Chopra Jonas, and LGBTQ plus a, whatever the hell the acronym is, model and activist Valentina Sampaio, the first transgendered model to be featured in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. More women, of course, are set to join. Now, Victoria's Secret called the partnership to, quote, build new, deeper relationships with all women by creating revolutionary lingerie collections, inspiring content, and bringing awareness for causes that support women, according to a press release this week. Folks, let's be honest about something. Now, it's interesting to me because one of the things that was enjoyable about the fashion show was it sort of, featured beautiful women. Of course, women that took care of their bodies, that worked out, that made it a point to eat healthy and to, of course, look presentable. That's not what we're seeing, folks, with the new selection. And of course, various pictures have been released on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter collectively about what the new models would look like. So a lesbian with pink hair is supposed to motivate me to buy lingerie for my girlfriend? I don't think so. Heavy-set women let's be honest, with more rolls around them than a bakery is supposed to motivate me to buy my girlfriend underwear? Nah, I'll pass on that. But it just seems that for whatever reason, and this is something that we do incessantly in this country, and it's funny because you don't see this on Men's Health, right? Because you don't see sort of obese men being featured on the magazine. They want men to be healthy, right? Well, for some reason, we're trying to glorify obesity when it comes to women. Who in their right mind thinks that someone like Lizzo, right, the rapper or supposed singer, who's appearing in bikini pictures all over her Instagram, is somehow supposed to be a healthy representation of what women should look like? That's not healthy, folks. That's the poster child for diabetes. That's the poster child for heart disease and God knows what other ailment that she may suffer because of obesity. But yet we feel the need to glorify this, to sort of put this on pedestals. And folks, I don't know about you, but it's ridiculous. And it's just another example of today's woke crowd trying to toxify everything. The Victoria's Secret fashion show was fine. Now, did it set at times a very unrealistic expectation of what beauty is supposed to be in women? You know what? I'll argue, yes, okay. Of course, it would make women, millions of women in this country, feel self-conscious. And of course, what would they do? They'd apply for a gym membership the following morning. And we saw gym memberships skyrocket every December, right? And even early January, when we would see that, at the start of the new year, of course, the new year, new me nonsense that many men and women engage in, right? When it comes to sort of going to the gym. But folks, getting back to Victoria's Secret, this is something that, quite frankly, I think will do nothing for the brand. And again, am I supposed to look at someone like Megan Rapinoe, right? An unpatriotic, woke fool, or an LGBTQ model? Folks, again, what is so difficult to understand about the fact that I don't, and many other men, and of course women too, don't need to see a biological man now portraying himself to be a woman as somehow an expectation of beauty or something of elegance to represent women, whether it be Victoria's Secret or Sports Illustrated. Again, the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Model Edition magazine is always something we always look forward to, right? Go to the newsstand, buy it. Of course, as far back as high school, I remember with my buddies, we'd buy the magazine, and of course, we'd fantasize about what it would be like to be married to these women, like every other heterosexual male. That's just inevitable. But now it seems that we're supposed to believe that this new crowd of women are supposedly now a realistic expectation of beauty. It's not. All right. I'm sorry. Chubby women are not, attractive. I get it. Some men say, well, a thick woman is nice. Folks, there's a difference between thick and a difference between that and women who didn't need COVID as an excuse to sort of eat away, because we all know they were doing that pre-COVID anyway. So why this sort of insistence on this? I don't know. With a country like ours, right, that has the worst obesity levels in the world. Okay. And mind you, folks, listen, I'm not, the best example of a slim body. Yes, I gained some COVID weight, but like anything else, I try to slim down and I keep my weight down. So when you see me on my social media, I'm a relatively slim man. Okay, but I understand that, that's not always the best representation. No one's going to be calling me to, be in a centerfold for Men's Health or anything, or GQ magazine. I get all that. But if we're trying to push this new idea of beauty down our throats, like we all know that the woke culture loves to do, they love to shove their nonsense down our throats every single day, whether it's in our educational system, pop culture, whatever. Now it's just one more thing to think about, because supposedly this is going to motivate me to go to Victoria's Secret. This is going to motivate me to go buy lingerie or sexy underwear for the woman I'm currently sleeping with. Folks, I don't know about you. This is madness. And again, I know it sounds misogynist, it sounds sexist, but it's not. It's being truthful. Why are we glorifying obesity? Why are we glorifying unattractive women supposedly now? Because it's supposed to be more inclusive. And we're supposed to be more accepting. Accepting of what? Ugly people? I get it. They have a right to live like everybody else, but that's not who, from a marketing perspective, is supposed to sell anything. And folks, if you ever took business or you ever took a marketing course, we have to go with what sells. This isn't going to sell. And I guarantee you, folks, this is going to blow up in Victoria's Secret's face. And I can't wait to see it, because the excuse will be, well, it's sexist, or we're fat shaming women, or we're body shaming. No, we're not shaming anybody. You know what? We shouldn't be glorifying unhealthy behaviors like obesity in women, which is apparently running rampant in this country. And for whatever reason, someone like me, your culture warrior, decides to speak out against it. Oh, I'm viewed as evil. I'm viewed as, lacking compassion. No, folks. What you lack, at least a lot of you that are advocating for this stupidity, is lacking common sense. And that's something I just can't teach you. I can teach you other things within the social sciences, but that I can't teach you. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the latest edition of the 5-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you listen to live every Wednesday night via Blog Talk Radio at www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson, was the founder and publisher of the very reputable Hudpost, James de los Santos. And we spoke for over an hour on a variety of different topics, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we discussed the importance of activism in Hudson County and how that's changing based on the fact of who he's partnering with, and of course, some of the messages being conveyed at recent rallies. Let's hear what James had to say about it.
Let me ask you something, because I've talked about not so much the march, but, James, you're a smart guy. And that's one of the reasons, I love having you on the program. But you're a smart guy, I think, politically and intellectually too. And my concern when I see these type of rallies and marches is whatever groups decide to sort of latch on to them, And I have a vested interest in saying this because this is a group who went out of their way to sort of vilify me on social media, and this is a group called Black Men United. And I've gone after them on my Talking Politics show with Hudson Media Group because I remember that they were bitching and moaning about the Ashford in downtown Jersey City, and it seemed like this group was just sort of unilaterally just being able to just have free reign and be like a really toxic group on social media. And I'm concerned that while the intent is nice and all, man, I'm just concerned about the fact that you're an upstanding person. You're a person with incredible integrity. You're a person that I have an enormous amount of respect for. And you're a person that I just think is a regularly good person, good human being. That's it, bottom line.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, of course, no. I'm just concerned, man, if a group like that latches on to you, it just brings you down. And the reason I say that is this is the same activist group locally that thinks it's productive to, march in Jersey City with a rally and chant, F the pigs and other just really derogatory things to say. So when you check out their social media, I mean, this is a bunch of, it's all sort of interrelated. I mean, there's a bunch of local yahoos in this group that I think do a great disservice to really good organizers like you. And by the same token, too, this is the same organization that someone like Councilman James Solomon in Jersey City thinks that members of this group should be on a CCRB. And for our audience that aren't familiar with that acronym, it's a Civilian Review Board when it comes to local law enforcement. And I just think it's, it brings you a bad light, man. And I'm not saying that about the other groups there, because I saw the list of groups that were advocating. But I just take personal exception with Black community. They're a toxic group. And it just seems like nothing ever makes them happy. And they seem like the type of local group that weaponizes race for anything, James. And that's a concern I have, especially with someone as upstanding like you, to have them near you or in the same category of credibility. They don't belong with you. You're heads and shoulders above them. So I'm always concerned when I see a group like that trying to sort of piggyback off of causes that involve you. Am I clear the way I'm describing my dissatisfaction?
How you feel about them, that's your opinion. You're definitely allowed to feel how you feel. The group itself, from my understanding, is they're from a different culture, different type of community than what I was raised from. So the way that I go about politics and the way that a Jersey City community is going to go about politics are two different ways. Mm-hmm. And so no, I understand you fighting back and forth with them, and I understand sometimes that their attack might not be something that everyone's satisfied with. But at the end of the day, these organizations are about the communities that people fight for. When we talk about the communities that being underfunded, about education, we understand it has repercussions, and those repercussions are, how these things outlast how people act. So if someone's not educating, going out and trying to do their best to fight for their community, but it's not in a way that we particularly like because it doesn't look polished, we have to look at the community that they're actually raised in and what's going on in Jersey City with the education there. So it's definitely, I definitely understand how you feel about the group because it's definitely not a group that's going to be winning an election anytime soon. And I felt the need to add everyone to the organization and the rally because we had particular things that we're fighting for, which was Amendment 13th, which was top of the line, and we were all united on that one.
One of the items we discussed was police reform, and of course we've seen some incidents in Jersey City in the last couple of years, and certainly someone that's been on his radar has been Hudson County Prosecutor Esther Suarez. We discussed sort of the controversy involving her office and, of course, some of the backlash she's received about possibly being named the next U.S. Attorney for the state of New Jersey. Let's hear what James had to say about it.
And to be fair, and he's a guy who does not like me, and I don't like him, but Tom Moran from the Star-Ledger has gone on record. And if you've been following that case and you've been following his series of columns, he really went after, for example, Senator Menendez for pushing so hard for the current Justice Department to appoint her as the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. And we know that again. And Tom Moran. I mean, I'm not a fan of him at all. I mean, I think he's more a propagandist than he is a journalist. But like a broken clock, Tom gets one right once in a while too. Just like a broken clock is right twice a day. It seems like Tom Moran tends to be right once in a blue moon. And it sounds like if you've been following the case, I don't know if you have, but he's been really going after Esther Suarez for months now. And it sounds to me, at least sources I talk to, maybe you have better sources than I do, most likely. I'm hearing that Esther Suarez probably is no longer in the running to be U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, again, under the Biden administration. And despite the fact that senior U.S. Senator Robert Menendez was pushing very hard for this, it sounds like this is dead in the water.
That's what I've heard. And, I listen to a podcast. I always listen to Talk on the Hudson. So I know you guys were talking about this a couple weeks ago, about that she's just too intertwined with the politicians here, and it doesn't make sense to have someone like that at the highest courts in the state. And just that I agree. But also, who knows that if the next person that's going to get appointed isn't in the same situation? We cover county by county. Now I only cover Hudson County. Who knows what's going on in the rest of the counties here in the state?
As always, it's quite an informative episode with the founder and publisher of Hudpost, James de los Santos. And certainly you can listen to the episode in its entirety by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkinthehudson. As always, these are the exclusives you'll hear every single week on Blog Talk Radio, and of course the exclusives that nobody else is bringing you in Hudson County media. And now some local stories for your consideration. And let's start off in the mile square city of Hoboken. And once again, a thank you to John Hines with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. An op-ed this week was published on the Hudson County View by the recently reelected chair of the Hoboken Democratic Committee, Rachel Hodes. And of course, it caught my attention because of some of the hysterical language being put in there. Now, she talked about obviously being very distraught after the election of 2016, and apparently being motivated by her husband to run. She signed up for the Hoboken Democratic Committee, and of course the most local branch for her regarding the Democratic Party. Now, as she alleges in the op-ed, her first campaign was focused on youth engagement, voter registration, and getting Democrats elected in Hudson County, and of course across the country. Now, of course, she celebrated her win, having just been reelected to the second term as chair of the Hoboken Dems, and of course she sees a committee which fulfills those dreams and much more. Certainly she talks about demographics, about the committee. Almost half the committee is under the age of 50, and nearly 40% of the committee was just elected to their first term in office. Now she goes on to say, of course, like a lot of people on the left, they love to sort of, have parties in their pants about, of course, having the most diverse group in the community in terms of diversity along age, ethnic background, and of course, life experience. I mean, these are sort of the things that people on the left sort of, make a mess of themselves over when it comes to this stuff. So, of course, as she mentioned, as we entered the most recent election cycle, she worried about her ability to recruit passionate people to run for committees. Of course, due to COVID restrictions, pandemic fatigue, and of course, burnout from the 2020 election, it seems like folks might be done raising their hand and volunteering their time. Well, she goes on to say that she couldn't have been more wrong in terms of the engagement and advancement, of course, in Hoboken. She goes on to say, quote, "The past 4 years have shown us how important it is to be engaged politically. And of course, like a lot of people on the left who love to bitch and moan about January 6th and still are doing so. But again, they're relatively quiet when it comes to the damage and loss of, property and value, both public and private, with the BLM and Antifa riots last summer. Yeah, you don't hear a peep out of that. But again, people on the left love to bitch and moan about January 6th and how it's such an unbelievable assault on our democracy. Please, spare me your outrage. No one's buying your nonsense. I know I don't. But of course, she goes on to say how the events of January 6th at the Capitol in Washington reminded us how truly fragile our democracy is. Oh, please, honey, give me a break. And of course, she goes on to say, we cannot and will not give up our fight for the principles of the Democratic Party that drove us to this moment in time. Voting rights, which, by the way, are not under attack. They haven't been. It's just another sort of talking point that the left and progressives and liberals and Democrats love to weaponize every election season. Healthcare for all, seems reasonable. Strict gun control, yes, because, the ability for, Americans to protect themselves in their homes and practice the Second Amendment responsibly, like, folks, most responsible gun owners do every single day. But of course, the people like Rachel, that that escapes her for whatever reason. I don't know. And of course, talking about racial justice, whatever that means, reproductive freedom, as if, women's rights to abortions, at will and birth control are under attack in New Jersey, with, obviously having the most liberal sort of laws that you have of anywhere in the country. And of course, we all know how much the legislature gives to Planned Parenthood every year. So what reproductive freedom? I mean, is that under attack? Of course, another more nonsense from Rachel. Of course, climate change mitigation, yes, another climate hysteric that thinks Hoboken's going to be underwater like Atlantis sometime soon. Criminal justice reform, yeah, that sounds fair. As someone who worked in the criminal justice system, I understand the need for that. Of course, protection for our LGBTQ plus A, 1, 2, 3, whatever, ABC, friends, I get all that. Listen, it's important not to marginalize people, but at the same time, we acquiesce way too much to the alphabet army, and I've talked about that on that program, and so much more. So, of course, she goes on to say in her op-ed, she's very happy to be working, of course, with her reverse vice chair, Phil Cohen. We all know how much of a clown he is in Hoboken politics. And of course, just another enabler for Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, and of course, others that are on this committee. Folks, listen, Rachel's certainly entitled to her opinion. She's not entitled to her own facts. And while I commend her for being involved in local politics, because that's something I did for some time. I was chair of the Young Republicans in Hudson County for 5 years. I also worked at the state level as a state committeeman also. So I understand the importance about being involved locally. But some of the hysterics that Rachel sort of espouses in her op-ed, I think, are unfounded. I just disproved some of it right now. But, and I've reached out to Rachel to come on the podcast to see, maybe if she's interested in having a conversation. But as always, when it comes to local liberals and progressives and the woke crowd, again, the climate hysterics, the social justice fools, you know what? They're always missing in action when it comes to answer for some of the positions that they take. And now let's move to Jersey City. And a special thank you to Daniel Ulua from the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, the Jersey State Assembly delayed a vote on Assemblywoman Angela McKnight's bill to establish a civilian review board throughout the state in light of a police reform rally outside the State House in Trenton earlier this week. Now, the demonstration called for the passage of several bills to create strong civilian oversight of police, such as making internal affairs records public, criminalizing chokeholds, limiting deadly force, and, of course, ending qualified immunity. According to Larry Ham, the chairman of the People's Organization for Progress, if the police review board doesn't have subpoena power, we don't want it. In addition to that, Ham went on to say that without subpoena power, a CCRB doesn't have any teeth. Now, Assemblywoman McKnight said that she understood the people's frustrations, but noted that the fight is far from over. She released a statement this week saying, quote, "This has been a long struggle and the journey will not end today. Hopefully we'll get closer, but understand that the journey will not end today." Adding that she became a supporter of CCRBs in the wake of George Floyd's murder last year. "After watching the horrific display of unchecked behavior by a police officer, I knew I had to do whatever I could in my power to prevent that unchecked behavior from happening right here in New Jersey." She's argued that her bill is strong since it grants subpoena powers to CCRBs, which would be empowered to investigate the police and recommend best practices, as well as review internal investigations within the structure itself. Now, McKnight's legislation also requires the State Attorney General, Gurveer Gurwal, to develop an electronic civilian complaint system for all police departments to post online so that members of the public can anonymously make complaints, along with authorizing $800,000 for CCRB training. She also wanted to say, quote, "This is one giant step towards fostering transparency, awareness, and equality in police practices." Well, folks, listen, that's all well and good, and that's peachy of the Assemblywoman to be so, adamant about a CCRB. And of course, she has to tread carefully because, when we talk about someone like Larry Ham, we all know that he's sort of a far left, progressive and activist that is very much about, defunding the police, right? He was part of that movement last year. You can check out his social media. He hasn't been shy about it. And of course, for everybody that was all about, defund the police, well, how did that go? Because a year later, you know what we've seen, whether it be across the river in New York with defunding the police and removing $1 billion out of the budget out of New York City, guess what's been spiking? I don't know, murders, assaults, gun violence. How about in St. Louis? How about Atlanta? How about Philadelphia? How about Cleveland? How about Chicago? How about Los Angeles? How about San Francisco? How about Portland? How about Seattle? Aside from the fact, folks, that they're all blue cities, and we all know what a blank hole blue cities are, because we all know it. Folks, we have it here in New Jersey. Think about it. A large part of Jersey City, Newark, Camden, Trenton, Elizabeth, Patterson. Plainfield. Folks, they're dumps. Okay? And of course, they're all blue areas, which we all know how well governed they are. But of course, people like Larry Ham would understand that because, again, to them and activists like him, it's all about defunding the police. Well, again, a year later, we all know how that blew up in your faces because we've seen the quality of life deteriorate in all of these cities. And of course, when we talk about CCRBs, folks, they sound like a good idea in theory. But you know what my concern is? I want professionals to be on these boards. Okay, people with degrees, master's degrees in either criminal justice, public administration, public policy, public planning, PhDs like myself in either political science, someone with graduate degrees, again, in criminal justice like myself, attorneys, criminal justice professionals. The last thing we need are local activists with no experience in the system to be on a civilian review board, much less giving these yahoos any subpoena power. We've seen it, right? We've seen Councilman James Solomon in Jersey City talk about, sort of partnering with radical groups like Black Men United. Have you seen these yahoos on their social media? They're a bunch of quacks, okay? But of course, these are some of the people that Councilman Solomon would like to see in a CCRB. No thanks. I want to see people that actually have some level of education, that have some level of experience within our criminal justice system. Okay? If you're going to give subpoena power to those individuals, not a bunch of local activists and a bunch of riffraffs that think that they know about police practices when they don't. The only police practice that they know about is being in the back of a squad car. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, please check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and www.livestream.com/hmgtv. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, make sure you check them out on YouTube. And as always, every Wednesday night live at 9 p.m., you can check out the 5-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson. You can listen to the episodes from anywhere, anytime, from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And folks, let me just say it again. I bring you the exclusives that nobody else is bringing you in Hudson County media on a consistent basis, and I've been doing so since the podcast started in March of 2017. Without a doubt, whether it's elected officials, candidates, activists, or anybody right under the political sun, you can make sure that I'll talk to them every single week on Talk on the Hudson. And certainly, folks, make sure you check out all of my social media on Instagram at Professor Fernando Uribe. I certainly appreciate all the new followers and likes. I know many of you enjoy my Instagram stories. They can be inflammatory, they can be funny, but they're also quite thought-provoking, so definitely check me out there. And also on Twitter at NoFilterUribe. Once again, I want to thank all the new followers and likes for all the posts that you see every single day on Twitter. And of course, make sure you like Talking Politics on Facebook, and of course, always follow it on Instagram as well. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you can be rest assured it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm New Jersey's premier journalist, top 100 Latino, Be the Latino Spirit online magazine, and your favorite professor, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.